Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Legend of Korra comic review. This is going to be my early, non-spoiler review for Mystery of Penquan Island, the next upcoming Legend of Korra comic release. The official release date is February 25th/26th, 2025, so this is of course just non-spoiler thoughts. I will give full spoiler thoughts in February when the book actually releases, but for now we're just talking more broadly general about the book. So straight away I will say thanks to Dark Horse for approving my review copy request. Whenever I send them in, I'm never sure if I'm actually going to get the book or not. For instance, I didn't get a review copy for Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer, but I did get it this time, and before Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer, I got it like a bunch of times in a row before that, so that is why I have the early review copy here. But we do need to talk about this book because it is the first Korra comic in a little bit. It's the first Korra one-shot or standalone comic, and of course it's the first Korra comic since Patterns in Time, which came out November-December 2022. So straight away it's two and a bit years since the last release, which is already like quite a lot given that we're a bunch of years into Avatar Studios, and we're so many years into Dark Horse doing Avatar and Korra comics. 2 years off for like half of the franchise is a bit weird. But then if you go back to the last kind of equivalent book, a 72-page comic in the same format as this, you have to go all the way back to Runes of the Empire Part 3, which is from February 2020. That's 5 years ago when this comic is actually going to release. And that obviously gets into a lot of the situation that happened when we got to February 2021, Avatar Studios formed. That has very clearly affected what has happened with Avatar and Korra comics. It has led to the switch on both the Avatar and the Korra side of things from the Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 trilogies like The Promise, Turf Wars, Runes of the Empire, into what we have now on both sides, Avatar and Korra, these comic one-shot trilogies. So on the Avatar side of things, we of course started off with Katara and the Pirate Silver, Toph Beifong's Metal Bending Academy, and Suki Alone. The second trilogy is of course Azula and the Spirit Temple, Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer, and the upcoming Ashes of the Academy. This is the first time Korra is doing the one-shot format because of all the kind of delays and kind of issues getting books out. But also, we will be getting more Korra one-shot comics because when this book was announced, it was announced as being part of a trilogy, and since it's a one-shot, there's more Korra one-shots coming. We just don't know who the characters that are going to be in focus in the upcoming ones are, but it should be the same creative team ultimately. Which, getting into that, the creative team on this book, it is a new one, though we have seen these creators individually work on Avatar before on different books. This one is written by Kiku Hughes, who we saw previously on Origami on the Avatar side of things, and then on the Korra side, Clearing the Air, the Free Comic Book Day book, which was collected into Patterns in Time. She also wrote that. The art here is by Alex Monique, who did the art for Cat Owl's Cradle, but also has done art for most of the art for like the Avatar Legends RPG stuff, especially the recent books like the Republic City Settings Toolkit and the Uncle Iroh's Adventure Guide. So we've seen a lot of art from Alexandria Monique recently. And spoilers, her art on this book is really, really good. It's one of the huge highlights of this book. It's just that the art is absolutely incredible. Colors are by Diana Sousa, who is also involved, of course, in the art here. Letters by Richard Starkings and Jimmy Betancourt. So, that's the setup here for this. I'll read out the description here just for anyone who maybe is a little bit unaware about what exactly this book is about. You can probably tell from the cover, which I have up there, but this should help as well. When a strange missing persons case falls into his lap, Mako is forced to choose between his job and doing what he feels is right. An upturned room and an unhelpful witness aren't promising starts to the investigation, but when his brother Bolin comes across a surprising clue that ties their own mother to the case, the pair embarks on a journey to the small, rustic island of Penquan. The island's inhabitants seem to have things to hide, and the brothers are determined to get to the bottom of it, even if it means uncovering uncomfortable parts of their family's past. So you can see, I think, straight away what the appeal of this as a one-shot comic for Korra is that, one, Mako is in focus. He has not been in a comic since Ruins of the Empire 5 years ago. So he's not appeared in any of the short story comics that have come out in the meantime. So it's been a while since we've seen Mako on comic pages. And I think of the main cast, he definitely needs it the most. You would say probably Asami also deserves a one-shot comic at some point. So hopefully she gets one of the next 2 slots basically for one-shot comics. But they've gone for Mako here with Bolin because it's quite an important plot for both of them, because of course we're talking about their mother Naoki here, the kind of mysterious Fire Nation other side to the family. We already know quite a bit at this point, thanks to Korra Book 3, about the Earth Kingdom side of their family, their father San's side of the family. We met the rest of the family basically, but we still haven't gone into that until this book with Naoki and the Fire Nation things. So straight away you can see the details here. Is that like, okay, Penquan Island, this is where Naoki is from, and what's the deal there? Why did she leave this place? What are the mysteries surrounding this island? That's the kind of premise of this book. So straight away, as a one-shot comic, it hits the first thing that I think they need to do, and I think something that they maybe didn't get as right in some of the early Avatar one-shots, and that's just doing a story that still feels important, even though it's in this new format that's meant to be more kind of sandbox style, is not one of the trilogies. But I think after, you know, the Katara one, the Toph one, they kind of realized they probably do need to do slightly more important stories just to make these feel impactful. And I think they chose the right story overall here with Mako to go for something big, like the one really kind of missing part of the brothers' backstory here, and it to be a kind of mystery and investigation. Mako's a detective. It's the perfect setup really for everything to kind of go well. You're using characters who need the screen time. You've got some mysteries, some backstories to delve into, and on the world building side of things, a new location that we haven't seen before, which is quite exciting. So, of course, it's a little bit of an overused setup for a story. These days, a lot of the recent content is about, mysterious new island that we'd never heard of before. Like we've seen this in Legacy of Yang Chen, Reckoning of Roku, Uncle Iroh Adventure Guide, and so on. There's a big focus on islands these days, but still, it's an interesting setup overall to get into this. So overall, how do I feel about this book? Overall, I think it's a very good book with exceptional art that is just prevented for me from being in the sort of excellent, borderline perfect category by the fact that I feel the scope of this comic is a little bit too big for how long this comic is. As in, I felt the comic needed a few extra pages to hit the beats that it was doing at the end, and I just felt like it needed a bit more towards the end, like that it's an 85 page comic, but it's being told in 72, that sort of thing. And that is the way that they do these. The parts and also these one-shot comics, they're all 72 pages of story content, and there's no real room for adjustment across that. And so that works relatively okay for a lot of the trilogies where you can adjust the way the story goes across the 3 parts. But when it is a one-shot comic like this, standalone, you just get this one book to tell the story, you can sort of see that sometimes the story doesn't necessarily match the format properly, where some of the earlier ones you could sort of tell it was a smaller scale story stretched to fit 72 pages. This one feels a little compressed. But I do think some stuff could have been done on the writing side of things to make it work even within the format. Because I do feel, I've read it a bunch of times now, that there is maybe a little bit too much time spent on the setup, the kind of investigation to even bring Penquan Island up as a talking point in the book. So that by the time we actually get there and we're doing the big kind of reveal stuff towards the end, I do feel they've left themselves a lot of work to do right at the end. That, again, it could have used a couple more pages, or the book could have just been shifted to kind of bring the kind of the start of the reveals up a bit earlier on in the book. It still fundamentally works, and it's why I still say the book is very, very good, because, you know, it's hitting a lot of the things that I want to from a Korra comic in this format of, like, I like Mako as a character, I like Bolin, I like that we're delving into their past and we're doing all this stuff, and the art is really good. It's just, if they had hit some of the beats at the end of this a bit better, if there was a bit more room to breathe, I think this could have been one of the best one-shot comics kind of ever. It still, I think, ends up kind of being one of the best, but I think it could have been solidly the best, leading off with the first Korra one-shot, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it to a certain degree has everything going for it ultimately. Because you'd say maybe of the previous Avatar one-shots, like maybe Suki alone or Azula in the Spirit Temple probably stand out as maybe being the best of the bunch. But there's limitations on some of those books, because the Suki one being set during the show, apart from the backstory stuff, kind of places a little bit of a limitation on it. The Azula one, clearly limitations based on how much progress you can make in her arc prior to them deciding to where they actually want to put the resolution of that. Here, it's more just, hey, you could do whatever you want basically in this book with this, and it just not quite enough pages to I think hit everything in the way they really needed to, because it's such a exciting and hyped fan like wanted plot point relating to the mother side of the family. But let's get into things in a little bit more detail. Let's go through some of the character stuff. I'll actually lead with Bolin. Bolin is in the book a lot. Like, it is Mako and Bolin. Mako is still the lead character here, very clearly, and it's like supported by Bolin. But Bolin still gets a lot of screen time, basically, in the book. He does have a little bit of a kind of arc of his own. He isn't a cop anymore. This is set post Ruins of the Empire, so Bolin is in his position as President Julie Moon's kind of assistant, and he mentions that he's an ex-cop. So it's why he kind of is helpful in this, because he's done some investigation before when he was an officer, but he's not doing that anymore. But of course, because of the relevance to, you know, his family, he gets involved in this mission as well. Because again, the back of the book tells you that this mission is not really kind of approved by the police force. Like, you know, it's just something he decides to do, and so Bolin kind of tags along as well. I think Kiko Hughes writes Bolin well, and makes the correct choice to not have him be overly comedic like sometimes he can be. That's a little bit of a trap you could maybe fall into with Bolin, is leaning too much at the wrong time into the kind of comedy side of Bolin. Here, I think for the most part, they keep things serious when they have to, with a little bit of levity from Bolin when it's required. But ultimately, you know, this is a well done dynamic in the series, and it's well done in the comics and here. And Mako and Bolin's dynamic works well here. We address stuff, because we're addressing their past. It relates to, you know, Mako had to step up to look after Bolin when their parents were killed, and that relates to a little bit of the arc they go for with Bolin, where, of course, the kind of premise of, like, where the whole missing persons case gets set off in this story is from the preview pages. We see Hisa and the kids kind of come in, and it's the kids who reveal, like, someone's missing, and whereas Hisa more wants to kind of cover up what's going on. What we do is that, in the same way Mako is that big brother to Bolin that we know so well, Bolin kind of acts as a bit of a big brother to the youngest of the kids here, and has a few nice moments there, just kind of highlighting the growth here that, you know, both characters, Mako and Bolin, have clearly grown and evolved so much from the way things were in the past when they were left alone together. And, you know, Bolin especially has kind of evolved from having to, you know, rely on Mako's protection to now he can very much take care of himself, and is now doing that for other people. And Mako kind of coming to see that is a nice little kind of subplot in the book that I think works pretty well. So I think Bolin gets used in the kind of right amount. That I think the book is helped by Bolin being here as well, to give a little bit of a different perspective on things. Because of course the brothers are different characters. They get on, but they are quite different in that, like, Bolin is more kind of fun, and more of the comedy is going to come out from him, whereas Mako is a bit more sort of by the books, but he is extremely intelligent. And getting into Mako in this comic, that's what they focus on. It's a mystery, so of course the detective is looking into the mystery, and they showcase how skilled he is on that front. We do also get to see how powerful of a bender he is in some of the action scenes, which is really well done because the art is so good. So that all looks fantastic, and especially the moments when the brothers kind of tag team together in fights is always cool to see. But Mako's kind of character arc here, the back of the book says that, like, what does it say? Mako's forced to choose between his job and doing what he feels is right. The back of the book makes it seem like that's like the entire focus of the arc, but like it's not really. Like that comes up once or twice in the book, but for the most part it's Mako's on the case. He wants to be on the case. He's devoted to it. And it's not really about, like, oh, is he doing this or that? No, he's investigating the case, and it's related to his family as well. So he's doing both of the things, and there's a little bit of a dynamic that sort of relates to that as we kind of get into the book. But for the most part, like, I wouldn't really say that this book is very much maybe a Mako character development book, because development suggests like a change or a growth to a certain degree in the character. Mako is presented well in the 72 pages of this book, and that's the praise here, is just that this is Mako kind of continuing on from the comics, where we're not joking about him and the romance stuff every like 5 seconds. We're past that now. So instead, this is like showing how good of a detective he is. And I think more than that, it's showing that one of the main positive traits of Mako as a character is his dedication, his devotion to do anything he can to help the people that he cares about. He did this in the past for his brother. He still does. He is this protector character. He acts as this way when it comes to Team Avatar as well, which we saw very heavily towards the end of book 4, nearly sacrificing himself, and, you know, Bolin having to kind of save him after he made that sacrifice. That sort of idea. He will put himself on the line for Korra, for the team, and as a cop, of course, he's always doing stuff to help the people on the cases that he's involved in, and that is the strength of his character. He's kind of insulted to a certain degree by the people he works with for being too focused on the job. Like, where's his personality, without realizing that no, it's that sort of like dedication to the work that is a kind of core part of his character and who he is. That, like, there are not many people as driven to succeed on these kind of mystery quests as Mako is. So I do appreciate that. I do think if the book had a bit more time, maybe you could have constructed more of an actual character arc, development arc for Mako in the book. Instead, it is more just getting to see him shine, interacting with all these characters, interacting with his brother, with some of the newer characters like Hisa, who gets introduced here, and that whole sort of thing. Both brothers kind of being pulled along as more and more information about the kind of their mother's connection to the case kind of comes out, that sort of thing. Some of the other characters, of course, from the preview, we of course see Hisa and the kids. They are not just in the book at the start, they are kind of consistently in it throughout. This is of course how kind of Penquan Island gets brought up in the story, so of course as we learn more about it, they come more and more into play, because the whole idea is, why are you being tight-lipped about this? Why can't you just tell us stuff about the island if something bad has happened, someone has gone missing? Of course, that's going to continue throughout. And I will say, like, without getting into really any of the details surrounding, like, the mystery of the island, I in no way was able to predict what the actual details were surrounding the mystery that was actually going on. So I think that's pretty good. Now, admittedly, a lot of the preview pages didn't give us a lot of information, and it was very much going off like the picture on the cover, what's said in the description and stuff like that. So, you know, I wouldn't expect maybe anyone to be able to completely call immediately what the situation with the island actually is. But it's interesting, and it is part of why I maybe wish that we had trilogies and were maybe able to turn something like this book into a full trilogy. Now, to do something like that, very clearly the whole thing would have needed to have been rewritten, and you probably could have included a lot of the rest of the team in the book and other characters, and done a lot more, because you just have so much more page count to work with. Maybe 2 books could have been pretty nicely done, but they don't seem to have, for whatever reason, the capacity to do that and do a kind of multi-part book like that. But that's kind of my general thoughts there. People will probably ask, and I don't really think it's too much of a spoiler, because, you know, it's a one-shot comic. It's typically focused on just a few characters. But for anyone wondering, like, hey, are Korra and or Asami in the book? The answer is yes, but only for like 2 panels. It's a nice scene. The one main panel where you see them is super nicely drawn, and I think people are very much going to like it. But they're not really involved in this story. That's the main thing to say. It's the correct use of them. I think it was the right choice to have at least a tiny glimpse of them. But yes, with the page count that they had, yes, they had to focus on Mako and Bolin. Because if they had tried to incorporate more of Korra and Asami, I think the book would have suddenly started to become really light in a lot of areas overall. So that's that. There are other characters who get introduced more towards the end. A lot of the stuff on the island I will not really go into details on, just because I think so much of it is potentially like getting into maybe spoiler territories, just in terms of like what the book is about. But there's some interesting stuff. The final thing I'll say about the island is just that it's described on the back as being small and rustic, and basically it is just that sort of idea of not quite that the island has been lost to time. It's not that it's ancient. It's just that it's an island that maybe hasn't moved on with the times, talking about going from the Aang era into the Korra era. That's more of the angle that they're going for with this one, and I think it's a very interesting take and approach that I wish was maybe given a little bit more time to explore. That's kind of my big thing on that side of things. I do want to spend a little bit of time just talking about the art specifically, just because I do think it is hugely standout here. Overall, I would say in most of like the mainline books, I think they've got really good artists on both Avatar and the Korra side of things. But Alexandria Monique's art is super clear, super clean, very show accurate. And it kind of feels like, are they allowed to do this? Like, are they allowed to put like this good art in a 72-page book? And like, it makes me wonder, like, how long does each page take to kind of draw? Because it's just so nice looking overall. It makes me very excited to see her hopefully continue on as the artist for the next 2 one-shots, which I believe is the case, but until they announce it, we never kind of fully know. But I do believe that is the plan at the very least. So excited for more of that. But what's here is fantastic. Like, we saw her art in a comic before, Cat Owl's Cradle, with Boomy and Milo mainly focused. Here it's super nice, like, and it's all the different elements that you want from a comic artist. Of she's able to do like the background, the buildings, the scenery really well. The facial expressions for the characters when they're just talking to each other, getting across the emotion, is super well done. And the action works really well also. Sometimes you maybe worry with maybe an artist who is this precise in terms of like the art almost looks like key art or like a promo image, is can they portray the kind of sense of movement panel to panel? No, that it's really good. Like when the brothers are in action, it looks really, really nice, and there's some great moments towards the end as well. So massive praise for the art. It's definitely like one of the best things about this book overall. But I don't want to overly criticize the writing, because I do think a major part of why I have an issue with this book is just that there is that limitation of like a one-shot comic has to be exactly 72 pages, and that can go both ways. You can end up with the scope of the story being small and having to stretch it out, and it feels like there's maybe not too much there. But in this case, I do feel it's a little bit more of a compression situation where we had to like cram a lot into just one book, and I wish there was just a bit more. That's the main thing here. But still, my overall recommendation for this book is that yes, if you are an Avatar or a Korra fan, both, you should read this book. I think it's interesting enough. The action is good, and the reveals at the end are nice. I just happen to feel that like, yeah, a few more pages could have made this like absolutely outstanding, one of the best comics we've kind of had. As is, though, it's still very nice, and still one of the best one shots that we've had. It's a good start for Korra in the one shot standalone comic format, and I'm interested to see what people think about that in terms of like when other people read the book, will they feel sort of similarly about it? Will they be more let down, or will they actually find what's presented here to be perfectly fine, and that they don't maybe agree that it feels like there's more pages could have been needed? I'm interested to see what other people have to say about that. But yeah, overall positive, but some issues, which is the case, I think, with most of the one shot and like a lot of the comics. There's always kind of something that isn't perfect, that whole idea here. If I was to give it a number score, it'd probably be like maybe like an 8.5 out of 10, 8.75 perhaps, something in that range. So, you know, very positive still. So they're my overall thoughts here for the non-spoiler review for Mystery of Penquan Island. If you do have any comments or questions, let me know below. Of course, I can't give spoilers, but I'll try and answer any particular questions you have if I can. But yes, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.